I'd like to ask my very last question to Richard. And obviously, thinking, we've got COP27 going on at the moment. We've had, a year where, obviously the energy price has completely been the headlines due to the very sad war in Ukraine. And I just want, quite general answer here, but how is renewable energy infrastructure helping to tackle the problem of high energy prices and climate change? How could you just sum it up, Richard?
Well, yeah, look, I think renewable energy in the system, provides a greater plurality in terms of the supply of energy, which is always, an important mitigant to being overly exposed to a particular commodity that has, inherent value risk attached to it, price risk attached to it. So if we're able to complement more conventional, more stable sources of energy that, albeit subject to commodity price fluctuations, with renewable sources of energy that do not have any fuel, price intake, so therefore should essentially be much cheaper to dispatch, and find a way of accommodating that through some form of storage, then I think you would better achieve a more sustainable energy system.
Thank you very much. And the same question to you, Jonathan.
I think it's all about displacement. Roughly 80% of man-made or human-made greenhouse gas emissions come from energy. So that's why it's such a huge topic for greenhouse gas emission reduction. But having said that, renewable energy it's now got to move on from growth. And there's been an enormous amount of investment and growth in renewable energy technology. Prices have reduced to the point at which it's reached grid parity and better, which is great. But now it's got to move on from being an incremental addition to the energy system to a replacement of higher carbon energy. The reason I mention that is today's total global penetration of renewable power through things like solar and wind still represents less than 2% of the world's primary energy. Just so to give a scale and a sense of the scale of what's now got to happen. And as renewable energy investment and penetration increases, Annabelle, so does, unfortunately, the penetration and scale of oil, gas and coal at the same time. So, renewable energy's got a big job to do now to displace and replace other forms of higher carbon energy. So that's the big challenge. I think the big opportunity is to do that, and at the same time to reduce the amount of energy that's used from oil, gas and coal, not just by adding to the system, but also by using the word reducing the amount of energy that's needed. How do you do that? It's going to this fundamental, extraordinary feature of the energy system that so much of it is lost in the supply and the demand side. And if we can add or compare renewable energy addition on the one hand with reduction of energy consumption on the other, then we can make a big difference, start to change the equation. That's what's needed.
And how is renewable energy infrastructure, in summary, helping to tackle these problems of high energy prices and climate change?
I think in our markets, when we look how they help to support climate change, we have two situations where clearly renewables have taken off the ground and became commercially viable in Europe, starting all off in a sense in Germany with the 2001 Renewable Energy Act. So where Europe has paved the way and got to scale using subsidies in a sense predominantly, which have driven European markets for the past 20 years. Our target markets are not in a position that they can afford such subsidies in a sense, so therefore only commercial viable solutions work. And that is actually what has recently changed. So around 3-4 years, probably 5 years around in India, we have seen that we have reached in the first technology being solar grid parity. So at this point, renewables were able to compete without any subsidies or any government support fully with coal plants and other providers in the fossil fuels field. And obviously replacing coal, and in particular to be mentioned oil, is for air pollution purposes extremely important in our target markets. When you look into India, where you have a 7-digit number, more than 1 million people dying every year directly on the consequences of air pollution, then you recognize how important it is. It becomes a large issue in these countries, in a sense, to do something about that. I think the interesting aspect, what a lot of people often don't get, is why is it, in a sense, cheaper? Why these guys are able to build on scale, on dimensions, which we not see in that way in Europe here, neither by size nor by price. The reason for that is that in our target markets where panels, equipment, that might be solar panels, wind turbines, whatever, they all been priced globally and traded globally. So they are a commodity which you pay the same price for pretty much without customs if you build a plant in the UK, in Germany, in Europe, in the US, wherever. What differs our markets is, in a sense, that a dollar has more purchase power when it comes to buying or leasing land, and it has more power, in a sense, to buy you more labor. So for us, building the plant, the balance of plant comes in significantly less expensive, in a sense, to build the same plant in Europe. I think that's an important point, but also the irradiation levels we see, which are sometimes up to twice as high than the average in Europe, make you to have lower building costs. You have higher output due to higher input on the sun, but also on the wind segments. And that all together, in a sense, provides for the consumer as well as for investors a win-win situation, because at the end of the day, as mentioned earlier, the latest auction we have won was actually 61% cheaper per kilowatt hour than a new coal plant to be built. So I can find, due to these scalability and that the levelized costs of electricity in our target markets have come down so much and amongst the cheapest globally, you have actually win-win situation for the consumer. It's the lowest cost to gain reliable as well as clean energy on the one hand, and the investors on the other side benefit from building out that infrastructure with returns which are usually a couple hundred basis points above an equal asset in Europe.
I'd like to thank you all for joining us today. It's been great to hear the manager's outlook for renewable energy infrastructure and the opportunities that investment companies are offering to investors. I'd like to emphasize that we don't know what's going to happen in the future. Investment is for the long term, and it's important to have a well-balanced portfolio. If you are in any doubt, you should talk to a financial advisor. Thanks so much for watching.